FC striker, about his career and about his time at Sydney FC. But as we said, Michael, we'll head back to your career when you first started. You said you were kicking the ball around when you were 4 years old, and you eventually got that professional contract back in both mine and your home area of the northeast of England with Sunderland. How do you remember signing your first professional contract?
Well, do you know what it is, Dave? I look back, and at the age of 12, I was at the rival club, School of Excellence. I was at Newcastle School of Excellence for 2.5 years, and I used to travel up 2 nights a week to get trained up at the club there, which was up at Benwell, which is a part of Newcastle. And I got told after 2 years, just about a year and a half before you become an apprentice and start getting a scholarship at that club, that I was no longer needed. And that was a massive wake-up call because everything was just taken away from you at a young age. And I found that very hard to handle, the rejection of not being good enough to make the academy, basically. So it took us a long time to get over that. And my father said, listen, at the end of the day, son, you're playing for a very good school team. You're playing for your county. You're playing for Northumberland, which is obviously like state and regionals over here. You're going to get an opportunity again. You've just got to keep practicing and work harder and use this to prove people wrong. And I managed to get a 2-week trial with Middlesbrough about 6 months later. And again, I was told that I was rubbish and not good enough. So that really hit home then. It was really tough the second time around, but it made us more stronger, and appreciated it a lot, how much I had to really improve and give it another crack, And I was lucky. I was always the oldest at school with my birthday, but I was able to drop back a year after I stayed on at sixth form college because I wasn't bright enough to go to university. So we stayed on at sixth form college because we had a very good football team and we wanted to win the All England Football Club Cup together. So after 4 or 5 games, I was in the right place at the right time. One of the strikers was out, a guy called Simon Foster, and he was injured. I moved up from midfield to the attacking spot. I got 5 goals, and the scout was there to watch Simon Foster, actually turned around to my father and said, who's the number 10? And he said, oh, that's Michael Bridges. He said, oh, I've come here to see Simon Foster. And my dad, to be fair, probably saved my career. He said, oh, that Simon Foster's crap, but that Bridges kid's very good. So I was in the right place at the right time, but it backfired on my father, who was a Newcastle United fan, because he forgot to ask the scout where he was from. And he was obviously from Sunderland. So the day the scout rang up the house, and I remember answering the telephone, and it was Jack Hickson, who spotted Alan Shearer many years ago. He said, can you come to Sunderland? We would love to give you a 2-week trial. But what we'll do, because you're at school and doing your education, we can do it as a work experience. And you can pretend that you're coming into the club to do that. So the next thing you know, Dave, I'm in there on a trial. And we played a match against the first team on my second or third day, and I was with the youth team, obviously with them, but we did a shadow play against the first team, and the ball dropped at my feet. I nutmegged Kevin Ball. I took it past the centre half Gary Bennett, and I dinked it over Alec Chamberlain into the back of the goal. And I'll never forget, none of the lads celebrated the youth team, and I thought I was the best thing ever. And Kevin Ball was chasing us he literally grabbed us around the throat and said, don't you ever embarrass me like that ever again. If you nutmeg me again, I will literally kill you, young man. And I thought, what? But obviously Peter Reid and Bobby Saxton from the first team saw something and said, get this lad signed now. And that was it. I really took a shine to obviously getting in with a football club in Sunderland. It was a professional team. And I was able to go and sign there the following pre-season. Like I said, I was able to drop back a following year to become a first-year apprentice, where you've got to do jobs and clean boots. And the one thing I did, Dave, because of the rejection, we were given a 4-week program before we go into pre-season, and this is how basic it was. It was 1 week, do a 1-mile run every night. Week 2, a 2-mile run every night. Week 3, 3-mile. Week 4, 4 miles. That's how basic it was. And obviously I played football in between that. But I did it, and when I got over for the pre-season, I blew everybody away with my fitness levels. I smashed all the running drills, so I think a lot of the other apprentices didn't do it. So I'd give myself a massive advantage ahead of them. And it was always me and Michael Gray trying to win the cross-country or the long-distance testing that we did. And I'll never forget it. I put it all down to being prepared in the right... And it was because of the setbacks earlier on in my career.
Yeah. Well, we just saw some of the goals that you scored for Sunderland back in back in the day when eventually, I think it was a 17-year-old you got into that Sunderland side, and it helped win them promotion into the Premier League. But of course, you had Neill, Quinn and Kevin Phillips the last time I think Sunderland actually did anything in front of you, and you as a sort of 18-year-old by then, you've struggled a little bit to actually force them out because they were so good, and you made the move to Leeds, and that was probably the best move of your career, I suppose.
Well, it was. I mean, at the time under Sunderland, we had a fantastic manager in Peter Reid. We had a great. So Reedy was the discipline, the organizer. He set these standards, and you knew when he was in. He didn't take many of the sessions. He just knew he was in the training ground, in the facility. I call it a manager rather than a coach. Bobby Saxton was the coach. He was hands-on, and we had two players for every position, and two cracking players. And we knew if Neill Quinn was fit, he would play. If Kev was fit, he would play. And it was like the little and large system. Danny Diccio played second fiddle to Quinny, and I played second fiddle to Kevin Phillips. So there was no animosity with that. We knew our roles, and we knew your opportunity would come with injury or suspensions or cup games. And I loved it. I was getting opportunities to play, and it just got to the point, 2 years of being, like you say, getting promotion or relegation, then missing out in the Championship playoffs with Sunderland. I knew that Tottenham Hotspur and Leeds United had been sniffing, and I was a big Tottenham Hotspur fan because of Chris Waddle and Gaza, and I thought that move was going to go through. It didn't fall that way because of Alan Sugar, and George Graham at the time was the manager, Mr. Arsenal, so it didn't quite work out. But when I went to Leeds United to meet Peter Ridsdale and David O'Leary after we'd agreed a 5.5 million fee, the funny part about that, Dave, the Tottenham deal had gone through, but I hadn't signed agreements. Well, Peter Reid had already spent the money on two other players, and they were on pre-season in Belgium. I think it was Belgium or Denmark, it might have been. And when I rang him and said, listen, I'm not signing for Tottenham, he said, well, you better find another club. He said, because I've already spent your bloody money. So it was quite ironic. So the next thing, I ended up going to the Leeds training ground, and I met some of the players that were there. I met Ridsdale, I met O'Leary. The training facilities were superb. It was a youth team of Harry Kewell, Ian Hart, Stephen McPhail, Jonathan Woodgate, Paul Robinson. A team that I could not beat every time we played them for Sunderland's youth team. I grew up playing against these boys, and I knew how good they were. They won the All England Youth Cup for the first time in like 4 or 5 years away from Manchester United. So that was huge. And to go and be part of that team at that time when they were buying the best young talent around the country, and Michael Dewberry, Danny Mills, Huckabee, Robbie Keane, it was just incredible to be part of, and it just felt right. Yeah,
there were some phenomenal players, and I think you struck up quite a significant friendship with Harry Kewell, didn't you? I think you even lived in the same village or very close by.
Yeah, it was funny because I've lived with my mum and dad for many years. I lived in a hostel for 2 years or a year and a half through the apprenticeship with 40 other lads. So you learn to grow up very quickly when you leave home at a young age of 17, 16. And we didn't, I wouldn't say a hard upbringing, because my dad was a policeman, my mother was a nurse. So it was backstreet football. They'd always, if I needed a new pair of boots, they would do that. But I wanted to play ice hockey when I was younger as well, but we couldn't afford the gear. That's how, we couldn't afford all the pads. So it was the football lifestyle. So when I'd signed for Leeds United, bearing in mind I'd been on like an apprenticeship with Sunderland for £45 a week, which is like $80 a week. And then I'd my first pro contract I was on, it would have been $360 a week. So I thought it was I thought I'd won the lottery.
$1
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So to actually sign for Leeds and be told that you can go and buy a house in the area, I was thinking, what? I've got to live by myself, am I not? Yeah, you've got to get a house. So 19 years of age, driving around the streets with my father in Leeds in a place called Wetherby, we found this a new property development that had been built with 5 or 6 houses on, and we pulled in to have a look. And sure enough, there was Harry Kewell standing outside with his car with Kewell as his registration. He bought the house next door to the one that I was looking at. So there you go. We became very, very close friends because we were neighbours. Lee Bowyer lived over the road, so it was known as the Leeds United cul-de-sac. And we got on very well with the other parents and families that lived there, because me and Harry, I was living by myself at the time. Harry was living with the girl off Emmerdale, Cherie, and Lee was living by himself. And what we would do, every time it was Halloween or bonfire night, we would put firework displays on for the kids in the street. and we'd always do the houses out with Halloween decorations just to keep everybody happy. And it was just an amazing time. But me and Harry, the bond that we got together, he's like the brother I've never had, Dave. And we would compete at everything. If we weren't competing at the training ground doing extra sessions, I'd be playing him at golf to see who could be the best at that. It was Pro Evolution Soccer on the computer back then on the PlayStation. Who could eat a pizza the quickest? Who could down a blooming beer the quickest? You name it. We would compete at absolutely everything, whatever it was. And I think that's what kept us going. It's probably the best partnership I've ever had with any player in my career. Because I look back at the 99-2000 season with Harry. I think I got 21 goals that season. I would say he set 7 or 8 or 9 of them up. And I set a lot of Harry's up as well. We just had a bond that I've never had with anybody before. And I think that's because the dynamics we had off the park as well together.
We've actually got a few of them coming through here. If you have a look, Bridgie, I think, this first one's against Sunderland, but some of the goals you scored in that early part of that season, they were fantastic. I remember watching them as a supporter. Just I don't want to blow too much smoke up your backside here, but this one in particular against Everton, you must enjoy looking back at those and thinking what a time it was.
Yeah, I mean that'll be the looping volley over Gerrard. It was. Do you know what I had, Dave? There was something that I loved watching Matt Letizia. I love being an entertainer. Now I could have a training session where I was absolutely horrendous, and I not on purpose. I was just it happened like that. You get some players that are training ground players that are amazing, but you put them on the field and they're not the same type of player that you've seen behind closed doors, because the atmosphere, I call it stage fright. When you go out there, you've got to learn. And I was the opposite. I would always train damn hard to be the best that I could try and be, whether it was fitness or whatever with it, like I said, with the testing and things. But sometimes you'd have a nightmare, and other times you'd be absolutely brilliant. But as soon as I stepped over that white line when I was a youngster, and even more so when I played for Leeds, because I was playing there with a better group of players that took my game on to a whole new level. It just felt right. It's like when I talk about Robbie Williams and I see people go on stage, they're entertainers. I just got this buzz. I didn't freeze. I absolutely loved it and embraced it. So them goals, I always tried to do something like a Matt Letizia or do things out the ordinary. So I could score from 30 yards with a loop and volley. But if it was on the goal line, I'd probably bloody miss, mate. That was the thing. I'd put them wide. It was so. Yeah. I've got fond memories, but we used to practice, like I say, with Harry Kewell and Ian Hart after training. We just free kicks and crossing sessions and finishing with Eddie Gray. It was just fantastic times, and I learned a hell of a lot of Harry Kewell, how professional he was at the time, and I learned a lot from Mark Viduka when he came, the other Australian, and because Viduka was such a natural ability. He was strong, he was physical, he could win a game single-handedly like he did against Liverpool that day. He scored 4, and I thought, I'll never play for this club again if the big man's here with Harry Kewell. And it was it was interesting to see the dynamics of the two players. Viduka had the natural ability and could have and should have been one of the best players in the world, but he was the last one into training and he was the first one to leave. He'd often did some sessions when he came to do a cool down in his jeans from the night before in his shirt, and the gaffer would let him get away with it. And I used to scratch my head thinking, if I did that, I'd be getting fined left, right, and centre. But Harry was there morning, afternoon, and he would do all the extras. He was professional, and that was the difference between the two of them.
That relationship with Harry Kewell was partly to blame, I suppose, or not to blame, but partly due to the fact that you actually came over to Australia and ended up signing with us a few years later. There's a shot of yourself and Branko Kalina. How did that all sort of come about through Harry?
So it was the move came about. Harry was saying, "Listen, you're not getting a game over there with Hull City," and I'd heard that there was a whisper of going over to Australia to Sydney FC, and it had come via a friend of Harry's and an agent that had got us over here. So he helped us out in that regard. And I remember saying, "Well, what's it like?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I've never been." So I spoke to Dwight Yorke. And Dwight told us all about the nightlife. He didn't tell us much about the club. He told us about the city of Sydney, He said, but you'll thoroughly enjoy it. He said, it's an up-and-coming league. It's a great part of the world, and get yourself over there, because I wasn't enjoying my time at Hull City under a guy called Phil Brown. I really struggled to get on with the manager. that was there at the time. We had and I think not long after, there's that famous scene where Phil Brown actually tells all the Hull players off against Man City, sits them down and tells them off like schoolboys on the middle of the pitch. And I remember getting a phone call off Nick Barmby, one of the players that was there with Dean Windass, saying, "Oh, you hate the gaffer." He said, "Everybody hates the gaffer now. He's made a big boo-boo." So I was just nice and refreshed and enjoying my football with Sydney FC. It was great. And the only strange thing that happened after the deal went through and I spoke to Branko and I'd seen the club was Branko was only there 2 days. And I'd got a good relationship with Branko for the time that I'd sat there and chatted to him. And I just remember the first game, I had some jet lag. And I missed the team talk. I was just in the corner of the dressing room having a little nod off. I was getting my act together because I was so jet lagged. And I watched the game, and I think we might have got beat 2-1 or 3-1. Came in the following day, which would have been the Sunday for the cool down, and Branko had been sacked. And it was really tough for me to understand that I've just signed and the manager's gone. And it didn't sit well with me, to be honest, but I didn't know what had gone on previously. I didn't know the previous results and what the dynamics of the dressing room. So I stayed in contact with Branko, and that paid dividends because obviously he signed me back for Newcastle Jets when he got the opportunity there, and that was another move about a year later. But because he came in, and it was just great actually to be part of Sydney FC at that time because Popovic was there. I learned so much off Tony Popovic. He was such a professional coming at the back end of his career, but I'll tell you what, he was the things I saw Popper do in the gymnasium was magnificent. I learned a lot of Popper. I'd lost my way a little bit in the football. I'd taken my eye and goals off what it was about being a pro footballer. So I came here, I lost a lot of weight, and obviously I learned a lot of Popper in that respect. Steve Corica took us under his wing. Used to catch up for coffees and shows around the city. But the guy that was probably the best influence on me as a friend and a mentor would be David Zrilic. He was sensational. We would hang around together day and night if we weren't with our family and friends. He was. It was a shame that I actually was playing ahead of him in his position with Corica and Broski. And I felt like I was shoving him out of the team, but not once did he make that a problem. It was a good bond. And there was another cracking lad. I'll tell you who else was an absolute psycho. Well, not a psycho, just a bit of a loose cannon, but a great lad. Was Fife, Ian Fife, the centre half. He reminded me of the guy off Scooby Doo, the guy called Shaggy. He was just so laid back, and Fife didn't seem to care much.
Yeah, he's got a reputation of being one of the boys at the club over that period. I know that there's I think a nice
Dwight
shot
Yorke
of you and Driller
many years before.
Yeah, there's you and Driller. But what about Juninho? Because when you first came, he was obviously a part of the setup here at Sydney FC, and I'm assuming it would have been yourself and Juninho playing in those front roles, along with obviously Broski and potentially Driller at some points as well. How did you link up with him?
Now I was delighted that Juninho, obviously World Cup winner, had known him from Middlesbrough, played against him back in the days. And to have him as the marquee, I remember sitting down next to him in the sheds and I just looked at him and I think I just went, wow, can't believe I'm sitting here next to you, mate. This is going to be brilliant. If you're feeding me the ball and you're playing in behind us. And he'd actually had a nasty injury. He dislocated his shoulder, Dave. And I don't think a lot of the fans, I don't know how many of the fans knew this at the time. It was a very, very nasty injury. Now, Juninho, the way he looked at it, at training, he would protect himself. There was not a lot of challenges went in on himself, but he just used to practice free kicks and corners and just do little drills. And I just admired it so much. And we did a lot of shooting together. But he said in the games, he found it very hard half of his game was to fend off defenders and hold on to players. And he couldn't use his arm to shove them off. And he needed an operation. Now, Juninho's words to the team and the players and the management and the staff, I don't want to have this operation because I will miss almost all of the season. And I'm the marquee player here. I need to be seen to be playing and doing what's right. And he could never really get to the top of his game because he was hiding. I know how hard it is to play with an injury. It's not easy at all. And it hindered him so badly. But he never used that as an excuse. He never mentioned it to anybody apart from the players and the medical team. And I admire him so much for doing that, because there's a lot of people would come to Australia in the A-League, they'd get an injury and they would just say, well, that's me, I'll just pick my money up. He didn't do that. And I think it cost him a little bit towards the end, because him and Cozzy had a bit of a fallout when I left. And Cozzy was saying, you're not playing to the best of your ability, or I don't want you in the team. And I think it was because of his performances with his arm. And he should have played, because of the way that he'd handled himself and the character that he was. Because it was special when he didn't have anybody challenging him, mate. It was just poetry in motion. What a player, and what a lovely guy.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Another lovely guy who, as you mentioned just before, who was there at the time, was Alex Bross, who went on. There's a picture of you and him from all the days back then when he looked a lot younger, and he was less of a legend than he is now in Sydney FC terms. How did you get on with Broski?
I thought Broski was a great lad. We didn't really socialise outside of the club. Like you say, he was younger, but when we were at the training ground, I'd do shooting drills with him, and I'd say, listen, this is what we do back in the UK. We do some stuff like this. And I try to make it as professional as possible, but always used to have like a little bit of a light spin on it at the end with the boys, just so we could wind Butzer up, the goalkeeper, because he was cranky. If you could... I used to score goals past him and pretend that we were doing like a Ouija board or a seance, and I'd say, is there anybody there? And he would go ballistic, like he wanted to kill us. So me and Broski would always wind him up. And I could see that Alex had something special back then. He was a great player. Obviously, Stevie Corica Bimby was the pick of the bunch coming at the back end, but Broski had something, and he was always willing to listen and learn. And it doesn't just happen that you have such a good career. You've got to work at it, and you've got to listen to people and take advice on. And that's what Broski did. The only downside to Broski, I've got to say, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but mate, every time he farted, he could clean the dressing room out. He stunk. And I don't mind saying that. He was an absolute animal, mate. But he was a great lad.
And still a Sydney FC legend, potentially our greatest, in fact, probably our greatest, in fact. Yeah, he's a great player in the end. And this is a shot I've got of you against Mile Jedinak when he played for the Central Coast Mariners. Did you, I don't know if that was just the only time you played against him, probably not, but did you foresee that this guy was going to go on to captain Australia at the Socceroos for the World Cup, should I say?
Well, not during that game, Dave, because I skinned him. Absolutely destroyed him that game. That was only one moment I went past him. he was... no, you know what I liked about Mile? I didn't pick him out as the player that would go on to do what he did over in England at the time, but you could just tell he was physical, he was strong, he was determined, and you knew you were... A lot of the players in that midfield, like, I think it was Teza McFlynn, said, I'm up for battle today. I'm taking on Mile, you know. And I said, we'll have a crack, whatever we'll do. Because I used to just drop off in behind a little bit, and every time I did, he would be the one that would be challenging. So what you've got to admire about people like that, when you go over to the UK or you go to Europe, you're taking other people's jobs. It's like when I've come over here as well to Australia. They see it as a threat. You've got to be thick-skinned, because they're going to test you mentally. They're going to test you physically in training. And Mile had that build, that model, that structure. Popovic had it. You know, he's so mentally strong. They've got that kind of, if you're going to give me crap, I'll give you crap back, and I'll take your job, and I'll prove to you that I'm better than you. That's the attitude you've got to have. And Mile had that in abundance. And once you break that barrier, and you prove yourself that you can do that, and you just rub off all the stick that you get and all the jibes, and you prove that you're a player on the training park, you can compete physically, which Australians have got it in their culture and their makeup. They're physically, it's an outdoor lifestyle. You're going to be made up of that. And you learn the trade, and that's why Mile did so well over there. And he's got the makeup of a captain. We know that now, but you could tell that back then. That's why I always see people that you play against and play with, who are potentially going to go on to be captains of teams or going to be on to be managers. And that's why I think Mile will go into the game in some capacity and be a coach and a manager without a shadow of a doubt, because they're mentors and they know what it takes to be at the top of the game. Yeah,
there is talk of him coming back to the A-League potentially for next season in some capacity. So potentially that's the role that he might take on. I mean, I've got one goal. I know you were only here 6 months, but I managed to find one goal of Michael, but it wasn't a bad one either. It was actually, funnily enough, against the Newcastle Jets.
The Jets, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, for Sydney FC, and it was a decent. It was actually a decent strike. Do you remember this one?
Yeah, I just remember the ball falling on the edge of the box because there was a hell of a crowd there. To be honest with you, they had a lot of travelling Sydney FC fans, and the ball felt it was on the edge of the box. And I actually saw it's funny when you strike a ball and you catch it sweet, you know you know you've scored. And there's other times when you bobble it and the can go in, but you just know you haven't hit it quite as sweet as you want to. As soon as that ball left my foot, you actually see me run away and celebrate before it hits the back of the net. And I take off towards the fans over there. I think it was the commentators were bigging the goal up as well at the time. But I just knew it hit the sweet spot. It was the left foot, which normally is just used for standing on, Dave, to be fair. But it hit the sweet spot. And it was a nice moment because it was a 1-0 win, I do believe. And it was a big result against Newcastle Jets and I just remember running off to the fans, and it was a nice moment, mate, to actually break the ice and say I'd arrived. And I think the lads all chased us half the length of the field as well to celebrate, which is always a good sign, because if you celebrate by yourself and everybody turns away and goes the other way, you think, well, hang on a minute, am I really a teammate here? So it was a good moment to see everybody celebrating with us.
Yeah, it sounds like there was a decent camaraderie amongst the boys back in that season. Any memories of particular people who were the jokers in the team at that time of the season, or at that time of the A-League?
Well, there was. I mean, I was always a one for trying to get pranks and things done on people with a bit of deep heat in the underpants and hoping that they'd put them on and burn their bits. Terry McFlynn, I know he's been working at the club in the past, and he took up quite a high role in the club and had responsibilities and that. I'll tell you what, he was a bit of a practical joker. Robbie Middleby came up in Newcastle. I played with him at Sydney and was working with him when he was at the Newcastle Jets. He was down there. He was a great guy, just full of energy, full of life. Never really got involved in trying to prank people, just loved it when other people pranked each other. He was kind of the kid that was hanging on, going, oh, I'll take a part in this, but if anything comes back, I'm going to hide. So it was good. We'd always wind up the keeper Butzer. He was a great character. But Fifey was the one. I think Dwight Yorke had told him all the tricks of the trade. So he was a proper character. And then you had who else was there at the time? That was and Ufuk Tali. He was a great lad, a very good player as well, by the way. Held the midfield together. It was the first player that I'd actually seen since I'd come to Australia that I thought he could be playing European football. He had that passing ability, the range. I was thinking, why hasn't he? But then I found out he had played in Turkey and things. So you can just tell the ones that have.
Yeah, played for Galatasaray, didn't he, with Georgie Hadji and Popescu and all these guys when they won the UEFA Cup, I think.
And I never knew that. And I remember saying to lads, who's this lad? He's unbelievable in that. They said, oh, well, he's played for this club, that club. I said, oh, well, that explains it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing very well as well now at Wellington. We should hopefully see him again in the not too distant future when the A-League restarts. But yeah, just after that, you went back to the UK and then had another season, I think, with Hull City or maybe Carlisle United, and then you were back in UK. So you enjoy your time here in Australia. Obviously, you've stayed on here and had a good time at Newcastle Jets as well.
I love the culture. I love the lifestyle. It was a great opportunity for the kids to grow up. I wanted to be part of a league that was developing as well and growing. I could see it getting better and better, and it's a shame that it's come to a bit of a stumbling block at this moment in time, Dave, because obviously what's gone on with the league, but obviously with COVID around the world as well. The timing's just been very, very bad for everybody involved in the game in this country and around the world. And like you say, I could just see it developing. There was better coaches coming through. The education was getting the number of kids playing at grassroots was growing. It was the biggest growing sport, especially in the women's game. So I thought, you know what it is? It's a great lifestyle. Yes, we're going to miss our family and friends back there, but me and my wife travelled to 5 or 6 different clubs, and we became a bit of a travelling family. So that was an easy move for us. We made the decision. And I said, listen, we can get passports for the kids if we stay here for the 4 years, and let's see what happens after that. And like you say, you've got to embrace it. I think players that come and go to different teams around the world and if you don't embrace the culture, you've got no chance. If you don't get to know the people in the region, and it's easier when you speak the same language. But I mean, I go to Malaysia and work now. We go to Hong Kong. We'll go to Thailand, and you've got to get to know the culture and the history and find out what the food is and show an interest. Because if you do, it's seen as so much respect. And like I say, when I came here, everybody was very welcoming. But it's because we embraced it. And I just found Newcastle region to live was a lot more blue collar rather than Sydney, which is, the high flying capital, or not the capital city, but the high flying city. I used to go to London for a weekend and then get out and go back to my quite quiet lifestyle in the coast of Newcastle in England. And that's what I've got here. And the family, we love it. If I need the city fix, we'll come to Sydney, but living in Newcastle is very laid back. It's a great lifestyle. And like you say, we've made the most of it. I'll never say never, because I nearly went back to England last year. When I went back for the Carlisle United manager's job, I went for the interview over there and made it down to the last three, mate. So that's probably the thing that would take me back. If it was going to take me back, it would be a coach and a management opportunity. So it remains to be seen.
Yeah. You get on well with Carl Robinson up there? You met him? I suppose he's probably not there.
We played together at Sunderland and got promoted to the Premier League when I went back to Sunderland in 2006. So it was good to see Robbo. Like I say, that I was on the text messages to him last week talking about where the league's going to go, what to do, how's he handled it through this time, what's he done with the players in the club, and just talking about football in general. But he's a great man. He's learned the trade. He knows the game inside out. He's learned the trade in England, Wales. He's had a taste of salary caps in America in the MLS. And I just think this has become. It's not like a foreigner coming in to try and get to know all the salary caps, what goes on, what's the club like with MPL levels and state federations. He's on top of all that. He's done his research, which was really good. He's come and embrace it, and that's what I talk about when I say you've got to embrace it and do it. Otherwise, you want to hide into nothing. As some of the managers that have come over to this country thinking that they've played the game at the highest level, they can just come in over here and think it's going to be a breeze. It's not. You find out the hard way.
Yeah, he's done a decent start to life up in Newcastle, certainly has. Well, I think we'll call it a day there, Bridgie. Actually, hang on a sec. I got a text from Terry McFlynn. Asked Bridgie something about a bottle on a bus in Brisbane. Actually, I think we probably shouldn't go there.
No, we'll not go there, mate. We'll leave that one.
All right, mate.
Like I said, Tezza was always wanting to get involved, but he never did. He left it all to me.
All right, mate. Thanks very much for that. Great to speak to you. We'll let you get off. I know your wife's having a party, so you can get back to that maybe.
Well, not a party. There's only so many allowed around in there. She's downstairs with the girls. I've got a few interviews to do, mate, tonight, so I'm quite happy to hide in the bedroom and watch Netflix and see the rest of the Jordan documentary. But I just wanted just to leave it, Dave, just to say, obviously, everybody that's out there that has listened or watched or is going to watch it in the future, it's been a tough time. We've been going through a hell of a lot. You just make sure you keep yourself mentally active. If anybody's struggling or feeling any form of depression or mental health issues, women talk about these things. Men don't. We hide everything, or it goes in this ear and out that ear, and we keep it all to ourselves. So it just takes a phone call or a message to ask people how they're doing. Because if you let it get you, it's a struggle and it's a big thing in the mental health industry and in the men's world. So do the right thing, but stay safe. Keep yourself active as well. Exercise always helps the brain out. And I just want to say thank you for the memories of Sydney FC being there, and stay safe and stay well.
Yeah, good stuff, Bridgie. In fact, Sydney FC have got a long-term partnership with Beyond Blue, so those guys are always there and willing to help anyone who's struggling a little bit at the moment. But thanks again, Michael.
I had a bit of trouble when I was at Leeds United when I got injured for a year and a half, 2 years. I really struggled, and it was a crying help to get some help. So that's why it's always a big thing in the forefront, mate. So that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, well said, mate. Well said. All right, we'll leave you to it. Thanks very much, Michael. We'll catch up later in the year, no doubt.
Take care. Good luck for the rest of the season if it goes ahead.
Sure it will.